Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of a motorcycle wiring series, and in this video what I want to do is cover some tips and tricks, some components, some tools, some various things you need to do to either modify or scratch build a custom motorcycle wiring harness on your own. So if you're new here, thank you for clicking for one. And then next, be sure to subscribe because I post 2 videos a week on all things moto, whether it be, custom build stuff or fabrication or service work, tips, tricks, how-tos, anything like that, riding, adventures, a little bit of everything, but I try to post 2 videos a week and keep you guys entertained and informed. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Alright guys, so as you see, we have a lot of stuff on the bench today. I'm going to try to do my best to go over all of it and kind of break it down for the different scenarios where you might use different components and their functionality and whatnot. So hopefully I cover most everything that you might need to know, or at least get you started. But if there's anything I forget or anything that's not clear or anything you want me to talk about, please leave a comment, let me know. So I read all of them, and I'm more than happy to try to accommodate. So anyway, let's get going. Okay, so the very first thing that I want to talk about here, diagrams. You can see here I have a lot of different diagrams and information for just the single bike behind me. Now, this is obviously a full custom build, so I'm going to need to be mix matching a lot of different information from different parts manufacturers. I have to make some things of my own, such as I created a full wiring diagram for the power distribution side of the bike just to keep myself in line. Now, comparing diagrams is pretty interesting here. Now, you can let me get this back in order first. Why did I do this? Okay, so let me show you how fast this stuff can get confusing and why I sympathize with a lot of people out there who, might get overwhelmed by this stuff. So let's take, for example, just grounds. Now, Honda, for example, on this bike, this is CX500, and a lot of other bikes they typically use the color green as ground, okay? And they use black for 12 volts. So, okay, I can try to wire that bike as per the diagram, and it'll be all great and groovy, but then I want to add this, just the COSO digital gauge, okay? Well, they use black for ground. Actually, they use brown for switch 12, and then they use traditional red for power. So you have to keep, you have to pay attention to the gauge color code as well as the bike color code. Now, we have our Morty system. We have our aftermarket PDM, whatever you're using. In this instance, we have, let's see, black is ground. And then we have red as regular, power. So this is more traditional. And this PDM system, it's going to use its own wiring color codes. So you want to follow that. Now in this instance, I actually chose to build the entire harness around whatever the color codes that were called for on here, because I had, I have the wire and I can choose to do that. So in some instances, you have to make a decision to instead of mix matching colors, I'm going to positively use the color black as ground on this. Okay, and then you have to follow through and make sure the rest of the bike follows suit. That way you don't get confused and it's like sometimes green is ground, sometimes black is ground. So that's really important. Now, there are a lot of different wiring diagrams here, and it's just very important to comb through them all, pay attention to how they all want you to be ran, and make a call on, you know, the color codes, and then create a diagram that's consistent that lets you just follow that guideline, and that'll help clear up any confusion that you have there. And this is, you know, this is just a very important thing. You want to have clear information to help, you know, if you want to work on it down the line or something goes wrong, you need to do a diagnosis. You want to have clear information guiding you. So still on diagrams here, this is just another example. So this is the race-on ignition system for this bike behind me, and you really have to pay attention here because in the diagram provided by the manufacturer of the part, they switch from a yellow wire to a white wire, a red wire to a black wire, and then brown to brown, and then there's different color changes throughout a single plug, and then there's another output side of those with different colors as well. So you gotta pay attention to this stuff, and it can be confusing for the best of us. So pay attention to it, make a diagram, write it out on a piece of paper, doesn't matter, and you should be better off for that. Now for a factory diagram, I know these can be really intimidating, and it's taken me a long time to really be proficient at reading wiring diagrams. And sometimes it can still be very confusing whenever you get inside modules and stuff, because you really don't know exactly how they're switched and exactly how they work when, you know, you have a diagram just in black and white like this and it doesn't show the internal switchings or anything like that. So these can be very confusing. Now, one tip that you can use to maybe better understand a diagram is just the flow of power. So if you look at your battery, you know, you have the negative and then you have the positive. So positive, think pressure, and you want to push that, you know, so pressure is going to be pushed along these wires, and then you can follow it through these contacts and look for the pathway. Now this can be very beneficial whenever you're trying to modify a factory harness, and you might have an example where you want to, I don't know, bypass the kickstand safety switch or something like that, and you're looking at the pathway or the flow of current, and you can determine if you need to put something to power or if you need to put something to ground, and just kind of backtrack. So it can be time consuming, but it will save you a lot of headache. Now, the only way to get better at this is just to study them. So I can't preach that enough. If you don't have one already, get a factory service manual or just a service manual for whatever bike you're working on, and that'll come in handy. Some more key information that your diagram is going to provide here, whether it be black and white or in color, will be your color code charts here. So you need to kind of get proficient with reading that, you know, see what the codes are. Now, one thing that becomes difficult with a custom-built harness is you want to try to maybe sometimes match the color codes or get something more specific than, say, a single solid color. You want to try to match those colors to maybe a factory bike. So like yellow with a blue stripe, for example. You know, that may be something that's in your factory harness. And if you're building something from scratch and you want to try to mimic that, you know, you can't exactly find that at the parts store in like some wire. So you might have to actually go and purchase, you know, like some high quality wire that you can get a specific stripe for. And if it's not something that you're wanting to do, you need to make sure you know or try to differentiate it enough to know that, you know, maybe that pink with blue stripe wire is actually going to be, I don't know, you change it to orange or just solid pink or something. Or even putting like a piece of heat shrink at the end of it so you know that, you know, if there's two pink wires, the one with the piece of heat shrink around it is representative of like pink with blue, for example. So you have to pay attention to that as well. Okay, so one thing that you are definitely going to encounter on almost any kind of wiring job, if you're doing it, you know, any bit decent, is heat shrink. So I have been collecting heat shrink over the years. It seems like I have a variety of different stuff, and they have different purposes. Now, the two main differences in the heat shrink would be adhesive lined versus regular. and they have, they have their uses independently. So starting with your more basic non-adhesive line, this stuff's pretty thin. It's easy to, it's easy to bend and collapse. So you can, you can run lengths of this and just kind of like seal a nice, long piece of harness if you'd like, or at least, it helps keep things compact and tight. You use it as protection from vibrating or rubbing against something, and that's handy. Sometimes you cover splices and solder joints and whatnot. So I save a lot of this. It might look pretty ridiculous that I have a piece like this in here, but I don't throw anything away. So one thing I do with the non-adhesive lined is, let's say I'm building a harness and I have a group of wires and I'm running them to a certain location and they need to maintain like a certain shape. Well, instead of say using tape and bundling that together and keeping that harness tight in one section, I might take just a little piece of heat shrink like this and just use it as a band, and then I'll put, well, back. So I'll put this on that harness section, and then let's say it's around a curve or something like that, shrink this one piece down, and then maybe another one in 8 inches or something like that, wherever I'm going. And this will actually help the harness maintain its shape, which is really handy. Now, moving on to adhesive lined, this is important because there's a glue within this. Now this stuff's, you can feel it. It's different initially, you can squeeze them. This stuff's a lot thicker, and I'll use that on like battery cables and like splice connections and in a lot of areas where I need like strain relief, and or just to seal it from any kind of corrosion or oxidation or anything like that. So the adhesive in here, whenever you get this up to temperature to shrink it, that adhesive becomes liquid and seals on whatever you're working on. So it's really handy. You can seal a bundle of wires and put this over top of your wire loom and then use that to seal that section of harness. So really handy stuff. You can get this in a variety of different sizes and like shrink ratios, whether it be 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, whatever. So definitely buy some good stuff here. You typically don't need adhesive lined in long lengths, so I've been picking these up from Fastenal. These are just on the shelf for me. And the little, the 6-inch pieces here, they work good because I'm usually only using maybe like 1.5 inches at the most at one time. So it'll take me a little bit to go through these, but I have a variety of heat shrink and I use them all. All right, tape. We all have this, and there are different types. So the one that is the most empty is the one that I have used the most, obviously, and that is Scotch brand Super 33. So this stuff you can pull pretty tight. It's electrical tape. You don't use this to actually make connections. Please don't do that. So this has its place. I mentioned before with the heat shrink, I can hold a harness in its shape. So you can do that with this as well. If you need to cover the end of a harness, or if you're covering the end of loom or whatever, it's at least a decent tape to use. Now this is just a regular electrical tape, slightly higher quality than a lot higher quality than like your Dollar General or Walmart or O'Reilly's stuff. So try to get the Scotch Super 33, everybody uses that. It's good stuff. So what we have here is Scotch brand as well. I don't remember what it's called, but this is friction tape. Now, also comes in a sweet package, and this alone is why you should buy it, along with Super 33. But friction tape is more for like the outer finishing type work. It appears like more cloth, so it has like an adhesive in there as well, and you can wrap it pretty tight, and there's a lot of, let's say, abrasion resistance in it. So the friction tape, good stuff, and you can use that, like I said, more finishing work. And speaking of that, you'll see Tessa tape a lot. So this is very, very popular, and man, it's just good stuff. You can actually finish your harnesses in this, and it looks pretty decent. And again, just a good good abrasive resistance to it. So it's just good stuff. Pretty decently easy to work with, and it will wrap something real tight, and it will stay that way. So This stuff doesn't become all goopy either, like your regular electrical tape. So another good reason. Anyway, so your Tessa tape, you can order this online. I know Revival Cycles sells it. And then your like friction tapes, I know you can get at least the Scotch brand friction from like Home Depot or something like that. I doubt you're gonna find it on your regular parts, parts store shelf. The Super 33, super easy to find. You can actually get this stuff at Walmart. So you can find it if you look for it, but I'll link at least one of these below. But they each have their purpose. Some are meant to help a harness keep its shape. Some are meant to do like the finishing part. So anyway, you make that call and try to keep both in your box. Okay, next up we're going to talk about what we're covering our looms with. So we have a few different looms here, and they each have their purpose. Oh shit. All right, next up, wiring loom. So this stuff, there's different kinds for different uses. So this is an old harness that I have lying around that I'm going to basically harvest, but you can see it has a traditional, like, generic, cheap, just plastic split loom on this. I mean, unless you're wiring a trailer, don't use this stuff. It's just, there's better options out there. Even though this is tough stuff, it's going to take a lot, for something to cut through that. There's just, if you're going to make something, make it right. Do a little bit better than that. So, split loom versus solid. So, one of the things that I've been using lately is this Nymax. Now, this actually does not have a split in it, and it's a lot more difficult to use, but it's really nice stuff. Now, this is cloth. It expands. It's kind of tricky to put on, but there's no break in it. So you have to think like 8,500 steps ahead whenever you're building a harness or modifying something. You can't, you have to think about how you're going to get this on along with your heat shrink and along with your terminals before you really make a move with it. So this is some good stuff. I get it from 4R Customs, and whenever the harness is done, it's just beautiful looking. So man, I'm going to continue to use a lot of it where possible. But definitely consider the fact that, being non-split loom, it is a lot harder to work with. So think about that whenever you're making something. Next up would be split loom style. Now this is, I think, Russell brand, and this is really high quality stuff as well. I don't remember exactly what model this is, but the split loom, man, it's really easy to work with. You can add small sections and then let wire come out of it, like in a certain break or something, and then you can just put tape on one end or on both ends, seal it back up, and just keep going. So a lot more user-friendly, a lot easier to use than the non-split loom. And this stuff particularly, it's bendable as ever, and it has a nice feel to it. So it's not like, it feels more cloth than nylon. So it's good stuff. And some of this loom you can actually, you cut it and then you take a lighter to it and kind of melt the ends or something to get rid of the frays. So each one is different, so pay attention to what you're buying. But this is good stuff as well. I've used it a lot, and I'll continue to use it where I can't use Nymax. Now, these two have a different use here. Now, this might look like it has like maybe a little bit more sheen to it. All right, and you'll see this on occasion. It has like a white lining on the inside. I don't know how much of that you're going to be able to see, but this is silicone lined. So this is going to be in high heat areas. So like as an example, I have an oil temperature sensor on that bike behind me, and that runs pretty near the exhaust. So I have an actual silicone lined loom running along that line to help protect the wire within it from that extra heat. So you'll notice that on maybe some like in the automotive world, like some plug wires or something like that. They have, some high temp boots around them. But yeah, this stuff, it's traditionally not split at all because, you want that thermal protection. But it's good stuff. If you can find any, and you have a use for it, definitely use it. All right, next up would be connectors. Oh wait. Oh, well, and terminals. Okay, well, no. Still going. Okay. Mother of God. Alright, so I work on a variety of different bikes, so I need a variety of different connectors. Now, this is a stock harness, and for me, because I'm not really building or modifying stock harnesses, very much anymore, I take these and I kind of harvest the connectors off of them to use on various other bikes. Now, if you're modifying a harness, this can actually come in handy. So you can depin all of these terminals, okay, and then you'll have like at least one end of your wire that has the correct terminal on it. Now you can buy all of these things, so you can remove all the loom and try to get lengths of wire here. Now obviously, this is if you're on a budget or if you're really not building any super crazy custom or anything like that. There's not always a need for a full custom harness, or full custom scratch built harness, I should say. So within this, there's a lot of connectors you can use, and there's a lot of wire you can use. As long as it's good quality, you check it out, make sure your resistance, and you ohm check each wire individually. So these containers here, these are all harvested connectors from various harnesses that I've had through here. So I save these and I can use them in various areas. Come in handy. So again, I never throw anything away. This stuff is great. But if I'm not going to go used, I also have new. So from Cycle Terminal, for example, I have some kits here, and you have, various style connectors. You can order specific terminals with their corresponding terminals. So they're all matched. A lot of the connectors, or a lot of the terminals and connectors on the CX build are these JWPM weatherproof ones, and these are real tiny. Okay. Now, if you're modifying the original harness, or if you're building a harness that mimics the original, and you want to maintain, like, let's say a more traditional style terminal, you can get like your bullet style, your blade style, whatever you need, say from Cycle Terminal, and you can either repair or rebuild your original harness and have it looking like it should be there, and it's pretty cool stuff. Wire. Okay, we have a variety here as well. So let me show you the evolution of how this goes here. So when I first got into doing this, I started with the wire that I had available. So that would have been the stock harnesses, and I was modifying things, and they worked, but there's better wire out there, because mainly the wire that you're starting with is like 20 plus years old. So you run the risk of having, like contamination or corrosion or something within the wire, or a break in a splice, or, somebody's poor craftsmanship in the past modifying things. So you can still do quite a bit with your stock harness, just in a modified sense. And I know someday I'll probably try to put a video out as I do that on maybe a lesser customized bike or something like that, because there's definitely times where you can use that and you can do this. So factory harness, this one's just going to get harvested for connectors, but you could still modify this and make it work. So maybe the second level, or next level up from the stock wiring, would be maybe some of this stuff. Now, this is some decent quality wire that you can get from, say, Dime City Cycles, or like Common Motor Collective, for example. And you can get quite a bit of different wire from them. Relatively easy to work with, but still pretty thick in terms of comparable wire out there. But really can't say anything bad about this other than just the overall size. So whenever you start bundling this stuff up, it does take up space, and you can find it hard to fit into certain areas. So you might be tempted to grab like your generic automotive wire from like auto parts store or something like that. And I just don't really like using this stuff anymore. I haven't used it for a long time. This is an old package I've never even opened. But generally it's not as flexible, it's not as durable, and I don't know, it's just, I just don't like it. So I tend to stay away from this stuff, and at a minimum, if you're buying wire, try to buy some, you know, reasonable quality stuff. Now, moving on to our last one. This is what I've been using a lot of lately. So this is TXL wiring I've been getting from 4R Customs Wire. And I like this because of the outer coating as well. It's very durable, but it's the thinnest coating you can get on this while still remaining like certain heat resistance characteristics and abrasion resistance. So really good stuff. You can flow a lot of current through it. And I can get this in whatever color and color stripe combination I want, basically. So I can make basically a factory harness if I wanted, and match all my factory color codes, and then hook that up with maybe my original connectors, but put new terminals on it, and have a brand new harness that works on your vintage bike. So that's another way you can use that. But this is really good stuff. I really like using it, and that's just kind of where I'm at today with it. Tools, very important. So I'm going to run you through some of the things that I use here. So first up, we open this up, heat gun, soldering iron. Okay, I actually have 2 soldering irons I use. The smaller Weller one here I use for, let's say, wiring or soldering terminals onto the controls of the bikes, you know, where I have to get into a really tight area. So that's really helpful for that. The old Radio Shack unit here, it's a 230 or 150 watt. I use that for a lot of stuff, and that's been kind of my workhorse for a long time. And then just a generic heat gun. I use that all the time, you know, all your heat shrink and whatnot. So I had that one forever. Nothing special. Smaller things. So picks, little screwdrivers. I modify a lot of tools. So this used to be like just a basic flathead, but I've ground this very thin. And I use this to de-pin a lot of connectors. Like as an example, you can go in here, and this is how you can disassemble your harness. And that's, you know, instead of just clipping things here, you actually have this little tang. I don't know if you can see right there, the little tang. You reach in through the connector, push that down, and then pull that out. That's your release mechanism. So, little tip there. And this is just a store-bought version of the same thing. I don't really ever use this one, actually. Alright, so you saw the soldering iron. Supposed to go with that solder and flux. The flux is used to draw that solder into the area you want it. Helping hands. They're a helping hand. Pretty straightforward. As far as hand tools are concerned, various pliers, strippers, crimps. So I know these are very generic, you know, wire stripper. I use them all the time. I've bought different ones, but I just keep coming back to these. These are just, you know, super cheap. I keep using them, but yeah, gotta have a set of those. These are for maybe like larger gauge wires, just some good side cutters. I use those all the time, along with like my small cobalt side cutters. And then as far as like, you know, crimpers, you know, these two double barrel crimpers, okay, these are for like my JWPMs or PH style, you know, like real tiny micro terminals. And then these are for, you know, things slightly larger, or either that or like weather pack terminals. So very handy. Need to have at least some of these. The blue ones I've had for the longest, and these have gotten most of everything I needed done. But as of late, I did have to buy some of these, and man, they're nice to have around as well. Just a generic, you know, a generic side cutter, you know, crimper. So I use that all the time. Funny enough, zip ties. I consider these tools. Now, these to me are disposable, because a lot of times I'll need like maybe like a helping hand or something, or I'll need to hold something in a weird position. Well, zip ties are here to the rescue. So I will actually mock harnesses up, and instead of just using a bunch of tape, I'll use either these, or actually bread ties. So here's another little thing. These things are real handy. I save these anytime they come with anything I buy, but wrap them around your harness and then spin them tight, and that's going to hold it where you need it, and that way you can continue your mock-up. So nice little tip there. But same thing with zip ties, you know, hold things tight where they need to be or in place, mock everything up, and then yeah, a lot of times they'll just get cut right back off. But again, I've found to me that they are just they're just disposable, so I go through them pretty quick. Lastly, something you have to have is a multimeter. So this is an invaluable tool. I've had this one for, I'd say, going on 10 years now. So you can test continuity, your voltage outputs, inputs, resistance, whatever. This is going to be a very valuable tool. So definitely pick one of these up and definitely get proficient at using it, because you will need it, and it will solve you, or it will save you a lot of headache and a lot of time whenever you're trying to diagnose an issue or just confirm wire routing or whatever. So get one of these and get to and get to using it. Alright guys, that does it for this video. I appreciate you watching and sticking through it this long. I know it might have been a little bit of rambling, but you know, there is a theme here, and there's just a lot to cover, a lot of different avenues and a lot of different paths you can think through, like the motorcycle wiring aspect of things. Hopefully it was pretty informative, and again, if there's anything that you feel I left out or you'd like to know about, hit me up in the comments. I'll try to get back to you there, or maybe I can cover it in another video. So if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do so. This thing's making some serious headway, and I can promise there's going to be a nice first start video before too long, so stick around for that. And then, yeah, you definitely don't want to miss any future projects I have coming. There's going to be continuing builds. There's going to be a lot of different stuff. So definitely want to, you know, be subscribed and hit that bell and be notified for whenever I post things like that. You know, like I said, 2 videos a week. But yeah, and then one last thing, if you like maybe the hoodie, or if you like my hat, or even a t-shirt or something like that, go to brickhousebuilds.com on the storefront, and you can grab something from yourself or something for yourself, and that just helps support the channel. So anyway, any and all orders are greatly appreciated. But yeah, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.